So yes, I'm joined in the studio by Ananna, Habib and Ciaran. Are you all feeling, ready for this debate?
Ready as I'll ever be, yeah.
Oh, good. Well, I think we need to start off with the first question that I asked the other group about transparency. Now, you all mention it as like a buzzword, I suppose, in your manifestos. What does it actually mean to you?
Who wants to go first?
Anyone can just jump in.
For me, transparency within YUSU is that people are aware of what YUSU is doing. YUSU is not taking away powers that should be with students, from students. YUSU is not burying things that are going on or preventing information from being released, whether that's cover-ups in the media, whether that's changing the protocol of how things are done, for instance, the vote of no confidence. And it's making sure that YUSU is meant to represent students, and it represents students better the more power it devolves to students rather than making decisions on their behalf.
Okay, interesting point. Habib, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I think there's some very, very good points in there. I believe that as well as that is that YUSU should provide a lot of information about its documents on its website to the students. It should provide easy steps guides on how to submit policies, on how to make referenda, how to change the union, but also maybe provide information on how money is spent within the union, but also how money is spent within the university, and some information about university hierarchy. I think a lot of information should go to students about how they can make a difference and make a change to their union.
I think for me, it's just so students are aware of exactly the dialogues that are happening behind the scenes, because I think people forget there are two sides to YUSU: the student SAB officers, and the back rooms of YUSU. And I just want those conversations to be public, so students know exactly the kind of things that are being spoken about, and so they can have what's the word I'm looking for? Input in those discussions.
How would they have this input in these issues then?
By telling us, I think, by reading and then flagging up issues that they see, and just letting SAB officers know, letting the YUSU staff know, and that's how you'd have an input. So
would you hold, one of you in your manifestos talked about having a dedicated hour each week to having to sort of hold these sort of platforms. Is this something that you would all be interested in doing?
Oh yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, so Ananna, you wrote in your manifesto about a better relationship with part-time officers. So how would you all achieve this, I suppose, and why hasn't this been done already?
I guess it sounds like a fault from the SAB officers, but it's not a fault. The SAB officers work tirelessly to meet the what's the word? Things that are asked of them from YUSU. And sometimes, unfortunately, PTOs do get, sidelined a bit because they're so under so much pressure to do what's being asked of them. And in terms of, I was a part-time officer for the past year, and it would have just been nice for someone just to feel like they're on my side a bit more. That's all it is, really, just to feel as if we're all united.
I think it's important to remember that the part-time officers are also students. And a lot of people are in third year while they're doing this, while they have tight deadlines of things that are really, really important, and they can't necessarily dedicate as much time as they should be, and that isn't their fault. And I think there needs to be a recognition of that from YUSU, that they're not overloading the part-time officers, that the fact that we have a number of sabbatical officers who are paid to do this full-time, they should be doing the lion's share of the work, and the stuff that's delegated to the part-time officers, if they're unable to do that, should be able to be given elsewhere.
Yeah, I think Ciaran raised a very good point, but also that they're unpaid as well, and unlike the sabbatical officers, obviously. And obviously, Ananna would know better because she was a part-time officer. But with my experience of working with societies, I feel that YUSU could do better in publicising the part-time officers' events and campaigns. I think the part-time officers do a lot of really, really amazing work. They have really great campaigns. For example, LGBTQ History Month, Black History Month, FemFest, Green Week. I think YUSU, especially the sabbatical officers, can do a much better job at promoting those campaigns and give them better publicity.
Now, how would you do that? Because the criticism that often comes to YUSU is in their weekly email that a lot of people just sort of throw into their sort of spam folder or their junk mail. So how would you get all of these events, because there are so many great ones going on, to the general public, I suppose?
I think a good idea. Well, if you say that people will ignore sort of social media and emails, just bring it to them. Bring it on campus, either on Hes West or Hes East. Have like pop-up tents and just speak to people, just engage to people. I think we're losing that sort of face-to-face touch of actually talking to people and engaging with them. And I think that's really important to have.
And we have loads of screens dotted all over campus and courtyard and Banbury everywhere. And I think having these events publicised on those screens, so when you're sitting down in courtyard having a drink or nachos, it'd be nice just have it pop up on the screen. So it'd be like, oh yeah, look at that event, that's going to happen, kind of thing.
Students are often very overloaded by the amount of emails that they get, because they get them from the department, from the college, from the university, from USU. The same is true when you see notice boards. Like, there's loads of really good events going on, but you walk past and you're just completely saturated. So I think trying to send out more emails or getting more flyers or whatever isn't necessarily the best way to go about it. I think the suggestions of having a physical presence on campus and trying to catch the eyes of students while they're doing things on campus is the best way to do that, rather than just keep throwing things into avenues that aren't working.
Yes, I think that's good, because they're often by the library giving out things or trying to sort of raise awareness of that, and I think that's really effective. Now, Ciaran, you mentioned that USU is a confusing superstructure, I think you put. And now, in what ways is that, and then how would you ensure that all students can use USU to its full capabilities? I suppose a question to everyone eventually. Okay,
so one example that I would use is if you Google USU's media charter, the first result that comes up is one from 2008. There have been changes to it since that you don't find out about until you've broken those rules, and then you get an email from Chris Wall. That's a ridiculous lack of transparency from USU about what its own members are expected to do. And it makes it very difficult to hold those in positions of responsibility to account when what they're supposed to do isn't very well signposted either. So one of the things you could do is just tidy up the website, make it so if you Google something to do with USU, you don't get a document from nearly 10 years ago that's out of date. If there are changes in rules, they're heavily publicised and they're very easy to access on the website, to make sure that you don't have to spend half an hour reading through pages and pages of bylaws to find out what the rules are within USU, and just making it much easier to engage with, so you don't have to invest so much time into it.
So would you change the website that is currently being changed at the moment?
Well, obviously I would have to see the changes that had been made to it. There's no point suggesting more changes that could well be made, be made already.
So yes, my question to you was, how would you sort of unconfuse this superstructure, and how would you ensure that students are aware and can fully use USU as a system?
I think in terms of getting students to engage with USU, it is just engaging with the officers as well. I think because, as much as I hate to say it, the officers are the way to get your voices heard beyond. I mean, you can send emails to the staff, but you'd feel a lot more supported in what you're trying to do if you have the backing of part-time officers, non-officers, and sub officers. In terms of making it less confusing, university student unions are a confusing organisation, and I guess all you can do is just be as buzzword bingo. I mean, be as transparent as you can, and just let students know exactly what's happening and when it's happening and why it's happening.
Habib?
Yeah, I mean, I say it again, is to have guides on the website and how to change things. Maybe even like video, just like video blogs on how to change things and how to submit policies and things like that. I think to keep it simple is very important. I think having all of the documents well placed on the website is very important, but is only a few number of students would actually read through them. It's very good to read through them, because I think it's really, really good experience, and you'll learn a lot. And you'll pick out really, really important points. But I think to make it simple for the majority of students to be able to access this vital information without spending so much time, so much of their valuable time on it, will be a very important thing for you to do next year, I think.
Now, moving on to something a little more local, I suppose, and physical. Your sort of opposition, JJ Wilson, talked about the reawakening of Headies. Now, do you think that Headies gets sort of the brunt of it, I suppose, in comparison to Heslington West? And what would you do to combat this then?
What do you mean by the brunt of it?
Like, sort of gets the, it doesn't have all the facilities, there aren't as many social events, that sort of thing. So
there's a balancing problem here, in that the university is gradually trying to shift the lion's share of everything that it does over to Hes East. It's got students there that don't have the same amenities on Hes West. And so obviously, insofar as USU is able to provide the things, that's got things like shops and things like ATMs, if USU can do that, then it should be taking an active role in that. But I actually think as we are moving towards Hes East, that's not an excuse for services on Heslington West to become worse. So, for instance, the increases in rent on Heslington West. For instance, the fact that a lot of the buildings are falling down. And it's kind of a case of they're going to be demolished within the next 5 or 10 years or so, but we've still got students in there and we know that they're not really fit places to live. So while we should look at the future for Heslington East and development there, we should make sure that Heslington West and the students here aren't left behind.
Yeah, so you just mentioned about the rent going up on campus. Now, this was a question I posed to the other group as well. Is this something that you as student union president in the 1 or maybe 2 years at most that you would hold this position can actively combat? And or is it just empty words?
I'll give it a good try. I mean, it's completely unacceptable that they're thinking of, knocking down some of the most affordable accommodations to, change it with luxury accommodation. And it's a nice idea for everyone to live in really great accommodation. But the part of the university experience is living in grimy accommodation is what you bond over. And it's completely alienating to students who physically can't afford rent of £160 a week. I mean, it's not fair. It's definitely not fair. And I would campaign to my utmost best to try and get that changed.
There is a very valid point, though, in how much change can a president enact. The thing about these roles, because generally people only serve in them for 1 year, is what you do is you try and come about with incremental changes that future committees can build on. You can't promise that, you can deliver this huge substantial change, but you can, insofar as you can make changes, you can get the ball rolling towards that, and you can have the kind of mood on campus that this is the direction we're going in. I'm not going to be able to say, look, next year I'm going to halve your rent. I'm not going to be able to say, right, we're going to cap it. But if we can have conversations about that and we can negotiate with the university, and then it's up to future committees and future parts of the student body to do that, to keep it going.
It's definitely an ongoing process, and the long-term battle for the student union and for students here at York, I think, is a very, very important issue. And I think, it does have to be tackled gradually, but we're making no mistake in taking the first step. I think it's important for sabbatical officers to lobby the university in changing this. But at the same time, we can also try and decrease costs for students in other ways. For example, subsidizing restaurants on campus, which are not owned by the student union, I think will be probably a good step in decreasing the costs on students.
Now, to another candidate's manifesto, would you follow Oliver Wilson's lead in to suspend your links with any sort of political parties or agendas to ensure that USU really does represent everyone?
I think that is a perfectly reasonable proposal. I think even if you are desperate to go into politics, once you've graduated and left York completely, taking a year out of politics is something that you should definitely do, because you're able to represent students without having any baggage attached to that. I would happily resign my membership with the Liberal Democrats if I was elected.
I mean, I'm not personally a member of any political party, but I think it's both reasonable and a bit unreasonable. I think it's reasonable because obviously you do have to represent all of the students, and you have to stay neutral in your decisions. But it's also unreasonable because every single person has political ideas, has political direction, and has their own ideas on things. So to separate the human from the role is a very, very daunting task, a very difficult task. I think quite impossible. As I said, I'm not a member of any political party, but I will never shy away from my beliefs and passions, and I'll keep those very, very close to me. But I will do my best to separate that from the role.
So same as Habib, I'm not a member of any political parties, but you can't. While political neutrality is incredibly important to ensure full representation of all the students, I have to be true to myself and my morals and my ideas and my beliefs, but I wouldn't let it encroach on my ability to do this job.
So speaking of, involving everyone, I suppose, or trying to represent everyone, Millie Beach talks about trying to get almost a quota of international students and graduate students into societies. Do you think that this is a good idea, or do you think that it could be quite damaging to societies or your university experience?
I think having a quota is quite dangerous because you can't force people you can't force people who aren't there to do things that you want to do just so it looks good. The way to increase representation of international students, women, LGBTQ students, is to create societies and networks that feel inclusive, so they don't feel as if they aren't welcome there. And that's all we can do. Having quotas is all well and good, but it's about changing the atmosphere of societies and networks. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, it absolutely has to be a grassroots thing, led from the bottom. So that's something for the international students networks and the other networks that represent marginalised groups to work for. I think a top-down policy of this is what we're going to make international students do is completely the wrong way to go about this.
I agree with both Ananna and Ciaran. I think it's quite patronising to put a quote on international students to join societies. I think if international students happen to be interested in society, you should, as the union president, make it as easy as possible for any student to join any society they wish. To publicise societies better, to make it easier for students to join. I think the idea of international students here and home students is to have everyone as equal and everyone integrated the same as each other.
Well, I think that about wraps up our debate tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, Ananna.
Thank you for having us,
Ciaran.
Thank you.
And so, yes, thank you and good luck with all of your campaigning over the next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.